Good morning. Good morning. I'm just checking my mic. That's all I'm doing right at this moment. Good morning. Is it on? There we go. All right. Good morning. There we go. Hey, I want you to think back for me a second. Think back to the last time that you recognized that you needed to do a refrigerator cleaning. Think for a moment. You know, maybe it's because it kind of got all this stuff in there and it kind of got piled up and you couldn't really squeeze anything else in there. And so you said to yourself, it's probably time. Or maybe it was that smell. You all know the smell because I can tell by your reaction, right? That something just isn't quite right somewhere in here, you know? And you begin to look, maybe you find some of those the greens in those plastic bags that aren't quite the same kind of green, a little bit different shade of green and a little slimy now. Or maybe you find that block of cheese that no longer is that pretty orange or pretty yellow color. It's like other very interesting colors and shapes on it, Or maybe as you go digging, you kind of find something like this. And you're not quite sure what it is. And you do what everybody else in this room does. That's right, you smell it, right? You pop it. Oh, man, and right, you're convinced. I don't know what it was, but it is not good any longer, right? There is something about the smell that leads us to figure out it's time to clean something, right? We've been in this series this summer, and today and next Sabbath is our last in this whole summer message series. And we've been talking about this idea of once a day stopping every hour of your waking day and recognizing God's presence. And if you've had that experience, and I know none of you have been going that way, I appreciate the emails that you've shared, the stories you've caught me in the hallway, just the stories of what it's like and what it's kind of doing in your life. Just the stopping and recognizing that God is present right now, and in 59 minutes and 59 seconds, he's going to be present there. And by the way, he was present the whole in-between time. But as you've done this, you begin to kind of recognize, with knowing God's presence more and more, I begin to kind of look at my life a little bit differently. Begin to discover some things that are going on in my life. But all this stuff, there comes a point in your refrigerator experience and even in your life experience where we know what we need to do, we just don't really want to do it, right? How many of you have ever looked in the refrigerator, got that whiff, seen the stuff, and just closed the refrigerator and slowly backed away? How many of that? Because I just don't want to deal with it right now. And we're going to talk about that a little more in depth today. But before we go any farther, I want to invite you just to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Lord, we stop again just to recognize that our lives really are a lot like refrigerators at times. We have stuff in them that we've forgotten about. We have stuff that we've pushed way to the back because we really don't want to deal with it. There's been times when we just simply kind of close the door and leave it sealed because we're afraid of what we might discover. But Lord, I am thankful again that because of your presence in our life, there is nothing in our life that separates us from you. There's nothing in your life that you don't already know about. There is nothing in your life that we can't clean out without knowing that you're always there for us. And that we do all those things because you are there. Not in order to clean ourselves up for you, but to clean ourselves up because of you. So, Father, today I just ask that wherever we're at this morning, whether we're here because somebody told us about this church, whether we're here because, we're visiting from out of town and we had to go to church because everybody else was going to church, whether we're here because that we're fresh in our journey with you or we're a long ways down the road, we all recognize again our need of you in our lives to some level. And so I just pray right now that you would answer that recognition again with your presence, not just in this place, but in our lives. In the name of your Son, amen. Part of the concept this summer has been simply this. To put a little beep on your phone, put a little beep on your watch, computer, whatever, and when it beeps once an hour, just at that moment, to let that interruption, that beep interruption, be your invitation to engage God in your life. And if you, like I said, if you've been doing it, you've discovered that it's sometimes hard. Sometimes you've turned the thing off because it just becomes irritating. Sometimes you've got to focus on something, don't really have time for it. But it's a reminder again that God is always ready to interrupt our life if we'll let him. And those interruptions aren't like, oh, it's an interruption, but ought to be an invitation again to engage God in our life. So today we're going to talk about the refrigerator a little bit. Let's go over to Luke chapter 8. Let me give you a little context here. Jesus has just told a parable, this teaching story about some seeds, about how you plant seeds in different places and how you get different results depending on how the ground does with them. And then he kind of makes this big switch at the end of that and talks about this idea of light, that nobody has a light bulb. Nobody puts lights in the ceiling and then covers them up. You don't have light bulbs at your house and you flip on the switch and you cover them so you don't see anything. You have light bulbs there to be able to see. And he describes this idea of light, of his teaching, as the light that bleeds into our lives. And you've probably been discovering at some point in your life that light does have a way of shining in our lives. And just like the refrigerator, when you open it up, the little light bulb goes off. Do you know if the light bulb goes off when you close the door? How many of you know if it goes off or not? Anybody ever do a scientific test for that? Remember as a kid, my brother talked me into, climb in there. I'll close it. Older brothers are the worst thing that God ever created. But Jesus kind of talks about this light shines in us. And then he says this very interesting thing. He says, for all that is secret will eventually be brought into the open because of his light. All that's secret will eventually be brought into the open. And everything that is concealed will be brought to light and be made known to all. And I want us all to think about that concept for a moment. What if that's true? What if it's true that everything in your life, that stuff that you've tucked away towards the back, the stuff that's there that you've forgotten about and hope you never have to think about again, the stuff that at moments you get that whiff occasionally in your life of something's rotten, but I really don't want to open it up and discover what it is. What if all that really will eventually be brought and made known to everybody? I want everybody to say with me, oh no. Because that would be true, wouldn't it? We brought you up here on stage and said, today's your life and your refrigerator life. We're going to open the door and, by the way, here's something here, December 2nd, 2003. Let's open that one up and see what it was, and we don't go, whoa, I don't want to come back here anymore. But Jesus says, my light will shine in, and everything gets revealed, and it's not the revealing, just like the refrigerator. Revealing that stuff is not to make you throw up, not to make you get sick, not to make you go, oh, how terrible. It's to get the stuff out so that it's clean and fresh. He goes on and says, to those that listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. The more we respond to him, the more he kind of opens things up. But he also says, but for those who are not listening, even what they think they understand will be taken away from them. Not just what they understand will be taken, but what they think they understand. And I think that's an important statement. Because Jesus is saying that if you don't respond to what I've told you, what you think you've understood but not followed through with really is not understanding. You've just convinced yourself everything's okay. Much like we've done with the refrigerators of our life, right? Everything's okay as long as I keep the door shut. Everything's okay as long as when all of you come over to my house, you don't go in my refrigerator. Because you don't need to see all the mess of stuff in there, right? So let's talk a second about things that are hidden. What Jesus says here. First of all, Jesus says, things that are hidden have power over us. And you know that power. It's the power of two words. What if? Right? What if somebody finds out about this? What if news gets out? What if the story kind of goes, what if? And because of that power of what if, we are all blackmailed into keeping those doors of our life shut. Keeping that stuff tucked way, way, way back far. And Jesus says things that have hidden have power over us because of that what if. Not only that, things that are hidden don't get better on their own. Your refrigerator is a prime example about that, right? You open those things up and don't go, oh, baby, that stuff's just getting good. Unless it's like kimchi, and that's not really food, but it's a whole other thing. But that doesn't happen. You have proved this in life. How many times have you left some dirty dishes, a pile of dirty dishes in the sink, walked away from it thinking, I'll take care of it later, you come back and there's more plates? Anybody ever have that experience? And you kind of walk away thinking, well, somebody else in this house will take care of it. To which the other person comes, sees that big pile and thinks, nuh-uh, my mess, Manny, right? I'll just put some more plates, let him take care of it when he gets back, right? And we have to, this is such an important truth. Things don't get better on their own, and we all know that's true in our lives, but we also want to accept it's true in our lives, right? Things that are hidden also eventually are discovered. That's how you know when it's time to clean your refrigerator. When the stuff begins to grow out of its packages. When that smell just gets, you can't buy a big enough thing of baking soda to put in there to suck up that smell. And that's what Jesus said. Everything is eventually going to get discovered. And the problem with the stuff in your refrigerator, you know this by experience. The longer you leave it and longer you don't discover it, the worse it is, right? I mean, it actually can get toxic. It can put out stuff that can kill you if you let it go far enough, But it's all going to get discovered at some point. And the reality is, after we get caught, we all feel bad. It's not the badness that God's looking for in our lives. It's about the ownership of those things in our lives. It's about doing something about it before it gets so bad that we feel bad after we get caught, but not before we get caught. The truth of the matter is, what gets us, gets us. And all of us have something that gets us in our life. It's that thing we tuck away. It's that thing we hide from everybody else. It's that stuff we say to ourselves, if somebody knew this, they wouldn't like me. They wouldn't approve of me. They would, in fact, run from me. They would tell somebody on me. Another way to put this is that if you've eaten garlic, you can't hide that fact, right? And much like the stuff in our lives, we know this is true, but have you ever noticed we don't ever deal with the main problem, we deal with all the other stuff? You eat garlic, I'll take some mouthwash, I'll do everything to kind of cover it up versus thinking, maybe I ought to just cut back on my garlic a little bit, So let's talk about some steps to cleaning out the fridge, because we all need to do it, right? Everybody, with your refrigerator at home, you occasionally have to do a cleaning. There are just times when stuff is spilled, stuff is grown, stuff is left in there that you got to go, okay, we're just starting from ground zero, putting on the gloves, putting on the mask, I got my spray, I don't do this, I just watch Lori do it, that's how I know what happens. And you delve in there, right? And you got the hot water going, you get all this up. So let's talk about, this is based on John, 1 John chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, which I think is an incredible statement. That John, this is one of Jesus' disciples, one of the guys that were close to him. So what he describes the years later, as he talks about our lives. And he's writing to churches, Christians, back in the first century. And he says these words. If we say we have no sin, that is, refusing to admit that we are sinners, we delude and lead ourselves astray, and the truth which the gospel presents is not in us. We say, oh, no, I'm not so bad. Oh, no, there's no connection there. He says we deceive ourselves. Now, the reality is, most of us in this room deceive ourselves on a regular basis. The greatest self-deception is what you think about yourself every moment of your waking life. It's what you think about when you make a mistake and those words go through your mind. Oh, what an idiot I am. I can never get things right. Or when that happens, you think, I'm just such a terrible person. Nobody could love me or care for me. Or why do I do this? They were right, and those words go around. We self-deceive ourselves because we don't want to deal with stuff. And John simply says, listen, we got to own up to this. If we say, I'm untainted by sin, I got my act together, we deceive ourselves, we lead ourselves. And the truth that the gospel presents, this idea of that we are saved in that act of Jesus. We are saved through what he's done for us. What he's done for us. What he's done for us. Thank you. Make you work so hard for this, all right? That's what the gospel says. That we're saved through his act, not my act. And if we say, hey, I don't need that kind of stuff, the truth isn't in us. But, he says, if we freely admit that we have sinned and confess our sins, admit and confess, he is faithful and he is just. True to his own nature and promises is the idea behind that. That when we confess it, when we own it, he is true to his own nature and promises. And will forgive us our sins and continuously cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And then here's the big amplified part. Everything not in conformity to his will and purpose, thought, and action. I love that statement. Because it reminds me of the power of ownership. It reminds me of the power of confession. It reminds me of the goodness of God, the trustworthiness of God, that it's within his character that he is just and fair in these things. So here's the first step to clean out the fridge. Is smarts, John would say. That is acknowledging the problem. You know, we live in a time in our culture and society that we have taught people not to take responsibility. I'm guessing all of us in this room have either been on one end or the other end of that. You know, something goes wrong and we say, yeah, I did that, but, you know, if they hadn't been such a jerk, I wouldn't have had to punch them. And I wouldn't have, honestly. But they were such a jerk, you know, they kept mouthing off. You know, I ran through the red light and hit them, but, you know, if somebody on the next car hadn't had their music playing so loud, I wouldn't have been distracted. And we go over and over. We have taught people not to take responsibility. Our culture has. And it's bled into our lives. And John would say that's a dangerous thing because that's part of that self-deception. But he says, having smarts is acknowledging the problem, saying, yes, I have sinned. And it's being specific in it. Not just saying, oh, Father, forgive me today because I have sinned. It's saying, Father, forgive me for the specific, when I said this to that person. When I thought that, when I saw that. Being specific acknowledges and admits and confesses the things that we've done. See, if God already knows everything about us, which he does, he is not going to be surprised when we say this is the specific stuff. It's more for our benefit. It's for that ownership part. It's for this idea of acknowledging the problem. Second thing, John would say, is to have the guts, the courage to do a life search. And I use the word there, courage, for a very important reason. Doing a life search is one of the most powerful principles of cleaning out our life's refrigerators. If any of you have been in 12-step programs or been around people that have been in 12-step programs, you know one of the things, they got to do this life search, and they got to go confess to people. They got to work this whole stuff. They have not only stumbled, they have discovered such an important principle that's actually for all of us, not just for people that have all those problems. Because John would say, oh, by the way, you all have problems. Just a lot of our problems are more acceptable than others, right? Because we've defined which ones are the bad problems, the ones you got to go to a program for, and which ones are, oh, they're just being themselves, you know? Yeah, they get a little angry, but they're just always kind of angry. They're a little cranky, but they're always cranky like that. But in discovering that principle of doing a life search, and it takes courage. But you've discovered in life that the best memories you have, the best experiences you can go back to, are things that required you to have some courage in life. I hope I don't have too many teachers I'm going to offend with this statement, but before coming here, we had a church school that was part of our church, and they would have a certificate day every spring. They always wanted the pastors all to come over and be part of this. So we'd go over, and they gave a prize for everything. Everybody gets a certificate because everybody's special. Folks, not everybody is special. They're special to you, but they're not special in... And I fear that we in our culture have brought down what specialness is in level to a place that everybody gets something. And the crazy thing is, if you talk to those kids, they get their certificate, they feel good for 30 seconds, they throw it away. Because they know the value of saying, you did good at something that you didn't do good at. Disvalues that whole thing in their lives and minds. And having the courage to say, I got to look at this stuff. I got to face these things. Having courage to do something that's uncomfortable has the biggest chance of payoff in your life. Biggest chance of reward. And to spare the excuses. That's part of being courageous. They actually teach us now how to apologize to somebody without really apologizing. I'm sorry if what I've said this morning offends you. I am sorry that it offends you. So I'm sorry. I haven't been courageous about anything. I've just said, you got a problem, but I'm just saying I recognize your problem, but I hope you feel better about it. There is nothing in that. Nothing in that that's courageous, that has the guts, and nothing that really has to do with me, which is the point of all this. John would say, listen, if we say we don't have this, we're deceiving ourselves. But if we admit it, if we confess it, to allow God to be faithful, God to follow through on his promise, God to do what only he can do, and that's this whole continuing to cleanse us. Because just like the refrigerators that you have at home, while they may be clean yesterday, they're not going to be clean in a couple of days. At some point, it's going to get dirty again, and we need this continual cleaning. And that's not a problem. That's just how life works. And I think God understands that's how life works. Last step. Oh, here's a great psalm. I'll put a challenge later when we come to our next steps on that card. Psalm 139 has this incredible statement. And it's a great prayer. And I would challenge you, if you want to be courageous, take this guts step, to try praying this for a week. Just make this your prayer to God. God, look deep into my heart. Look deep into my heart. And find out everything I am thinking. Again, nothing's going to surprise God. He's not going to go, I had no clue. This is all about us. Don't let me follow evil ways, but lead me in the path that time has proven true. It's a prayer of honesty and openness before God. It's a prayer that says, God, check it out. Search, look through all the refrigerator space in my life. Get out the stuff, Don't let me follow, but lead me. I want to be led in the right way, in a way that time has proven true. And even if I'm not ready at this moment to take the steps on that path, just saying, honest God, I'm not ready. I mean, I know I blew it again, and 2 weeks I got a big weekend plan with the boys, and I'm probably going to blow it again, and I really don't, I'm kind of looking forward to that, but I do want to get connected with you and on track with you, and so help me to get to that place of being tracked. I think God honors that kind of request. I think God always honors an honest request to him. Third step is action. Simply do it. How many times in your life have you kind of taken those first two steps, thought about stuff, got a little courageous, did some search, kind of said, yeah, I got to do this. I got it all figured out now. Just going to leave it there because I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger. I'm not quite ready to get in and do it. My simple appeal to you would be simply to do it soon. Because the longer you put it off, the more it becomes like that stuff in the back of your refrigerator. That used to be at the front of your refrigerator, but kind of got moved back again, and now it's gone from being something you looked forward to having to something that you don't want anything to do with. James would simply put it this way. Do what God's teaching says. Do it. When you only listen and do nothing, you're fooling ourselves. And God doesn't want any of us to be a fool. You don't want to be a fool. I hope you don't want to be a fool. And the only way not to be a fool, at least in the spiritual kind of realm of thing, is to follow through, is to respond to it. God is not looking for more information into our life. He is looking for more transformation in our life. Now, that information can help lead to that, but just piling up more and more information. You know that Christians, I believe Christians, are educated beyond their level of obedience. And we as the church contribute to that. We give you more information. We come out with greater studies. We'll be able to explain things clearer and clearer. Our issue is not getting clarity. Our issue is getting some action in our lives. And I'm talking about myself. But the amazing thing is that the sooner you do it, the sooner you do it. Somebody ought to write that down. There was a book I read a couple of years ago. I think it's called Eat the Frog First. Anybody heard this book? I'm glad I wasn't making it up, right? Eat the frog first. And the simple idea was, if you got a frog to eat and you got all this other stuff to eat, and you know you got to eat the frog first. And it goes against everything you did as a child, because as a child, they put that stuff on your plate, put it over to the side, you eat everything else, just keep looking at it, right? Give the eyes to mom, eat it, And as long as it sits on that plate, the bigger and bigger it seems in life, right? The more power it has over you. But the quicker you get in and eat that frog, and I'm not suggesting you eat frogs, that was just the name of the book, but it's a great concept. You got to eat a frog. Eat the frog first, and then everything else will be so much better. And it's a great principle for life, because it's about doing it right away and responding right away. So here's my question as we close today. What's the one thing? What's the one thing that you need to bring into the light? I want you to think about it for a second. And don't come up with the very first response. Let it linger for a second. Do kind of the smelling like you would in a refrigerator. Don't right away say, I know it's got to be in the cheese drawer, or I know it's got to be in the vegetable drawer. Just get in the kind of process. What is that? Follow your smell. Where the stink's coming from is probably the most powerful place. Because when something stinks, there's enough you can put over the top of it to cover it up. But what is that? What is that one thing that you really need to bring to the light? Because when the beep beeps, I encourage you again, for the next few weeks, just allow that interruption to be your invitation to engage with God, to invite God into your life, to respond to God. Next Sabbath is our last in the message part of the series, but the experience goes on for a few more weeks after that. And I just want to invite you, those of you that have been part of this, it's still not too late to try it out for the next few weeks. If you had an experience, good or bad, or kind of has been a struggle, I would just love to hear your story my story at lookingforachurch.org. Send us something. It always lets us know kind of what's going on. I've gotten some great responses from some people already. But with that said, I invite you to take out that connection card, that connect card that Pastor Jason talked about earlier. And on the back side are some possible next steps. Every week we want to encourage people to take another step spiritually. And so here's maybe 3 possible next steps today. Maybe next step today is simply to keep staying connected to God every 60 minutes for the next 32 days. That's how much longer this experience is going. Maybe your next step today is to begin the steps to cleansing your life. Begin to think about that. Where am I at with this? Do I need to admit? Do I need to start? Where am I at with this whole thing? Maybe your next step is to take the courageous step of praying Psalm 139 to God this week. Maybe that's your goal. I'm going to pray that prayer. God, search me. See if there's anything. Know all my thoughts. And don't lead me, help me stay off the bad paths and lead me in the good paths. Whatever it is, I hope you'll take some kind of next step today. And some folks are going to come forward. They're going to collect our offerings and tithes. And this is the place you'll put that next step card into. And let me talk about tithes and offering for a moment. We actually take a couple of different offerings here. Jerry Woods will talk about the kids one. I just want to talk about the main one. And I know a number of you give online, and thank you for giving online. I know some of you mail your stuff in on a regular basis. Thank you for that. Some of you give, every week or once a month here through church. Thank you for that. If you're visiting with us today We don't expect you to do anything, but other than put that card in there, that'll be your offering for the day. This is for those that consider New Hope their church home. But I just want to remind you again that when money comes in, it's not just for us to pay all the stuff that we have to pay. There's a point behind it all. It's creating an environment, providing resources to impact and change people's lives.